Hey guys, let me know what you think by liking and commenting, and it really helps me and this channel out when you subscribe, so please click that button. Thanks a bunch. Hey everybody, so the trains that I'm going to build for you today are these German commuter sets that are wrapped in Coca-Cola advertising. These seem to be pretty common in Germany and other parts of Europe, particularly in Germany from what I've seen, starting in the early 1990s and continuing through the end of that decade. I don't know so much about now. In fact, I really haven't seen a lot of these more recently in the videos that I've watched, but if you go back and look in the 1990s, you can see that Coke went a little bit bonkers and wrapped a lot of trains. This also seemed to happen a lot in Germany. And at that time, particularly in the early 90s, there was still a West and East Germany, and it seems like they did it in both. This consist and the one that you saw prior are East German style DB double-decker cars. And look, they even wrapped a locomotive in Coca-Cola, and this is a Skoda locomotive. So if it's Coke, I pretty much want it. The first consist is going to be a German Deutsche Bahn S-Bahn unit, which is basically suburban rail unit. And as you saw from the photos, this is going to be a prototypical unit. So we'll pull it out of the box here, and they still currently make this set if you still want to purchase it. As far as I can tell, it matches exactly the photograph that I showed you earlier. This set does have a destination board on the cab car, and it has auto-reversing lights, and it does that through a friction switch, not through DCC, which I actually sort of like. I think what's nice about that is, I don't have to worry about programming it or, putting it into consist or anything like that. I think the downside is the direction lamp doesn't actually change until the train starts to move. They did an impressive job of getting the graphics on here. You can't feel it, but it has a bit of a matte, almost egg-like sheen to it. They did a really nice job with these, and certainly even close up, they have interiors, which I'll show you a little bit later. And as you can see here, the control end is just like the photograph. And it contains the pickup shoe, but you can't connect these electrically. And the reason why you can't do it is these are actually some pretty old cars if we're talking about the tooling. And the reason why I know that is because I actually have the older set, which is a 3-car set, and it's ever so slightly different. It's actually from a different prototype. And even though this, it still depicts a Coke S-Bahn train, they've kept this tooling around. And they also make the standard S-Bahn cars, which I'll show you here in a little bit. So from what I can tell, and again, I have Marklin S-Bahn cars from way back in the day, from the 90s. The tooling from the newer set is very old. It's a very ancient tooling. And I suppose that saves them money and maybe saves us money. But again, it would be nicer to have a newer tooling so that you can do things like connect these cars using an electric coupler. I've already modified these cars so that they'll have lights throughout, but in order to do that, because again, you can't couple these things electrically, you have to have a pickup grinder for each car. It's a little bit obnoxious, and I don't know, there's really nothing much I can do about it. If you want this consist, this is what you're going to have to deal with, having a brand new product from a really old tooling. It does sort of suck, though. The reason I bought the new set is because I wanted to couple all 7 of these cars together and have a 7-car consist, but you can't do that because I figured there'd be new tooling, but there's absolutely no way to couple the cab control car. I've seen these S-Bahn trains in real life, and you can, in fact, you can couple the cab car to the locomotive, but not in these, so that really sucks. But anyway, this is a photograph of the real 4-car set. That is the newer set that you can buy, and here is a photograph of the older 3-car set. So they're prototypical, pretty much dead on for what it's worth. Here's an example of the actual S-Bahn coach and what it looks like in its native livery. And if you're thinking that the Coke paint job is such a different one, it's actually not true. It's actually, from what I can tell, a wrap. And if you look at the ends, you may be thinking there's something wrong with the Coke car, but nope, this is the way it actually looks. Again, not to harp on this, but if you purchase any of these Coca-Cola S-Bahn cars, just know that you are getting a tooling that is at least from probably the mid or maybe late 1980s. And I know this because my S-Bahn consist is from the 80s and they look exactly the same. And if you look at mine, my cab car here, it was made in West Germany. So yeah, these are getting pretty long in the tooth, and hopefully one of these days I don't know, they'll do something and come up with a new tooling that allows for kinetic energy couplers, that kind of thing. The next train I'm going to make is going to be made up with cars from Rivarossi's HR4160 set. These are models of Deutsche Reichsbahn or East German DBV style double-decker coaches that I think came out about 2012, and they were just around 250, something like that. And this was a real thing too. In fact, this model is exactly the same as it was in real life. I have the DR version, but they also made a DB version as well. This particular consist is made up of 4 units. It has basically the 2 ends are the same and the 2 middles are the same, except you have to line up the Coca-Cola wave so that it looks proper. There are provisions for a DCC controller on both of the cab cars, but I don't use it because for different reasons I'll go into, this is not a pushable consist. I've tried just about everything you can possibly do to push this consist, and it just doesn't work. And it's a pull only, and because of that, there are red lights that stay on. The entire consist is coupled together with these shared Jacobs bogies, and you can see here you just slot one into the other. And again, you have to sort of you have to make sure you get the 2 middle ones right, or the Coca-Cola wave doesn't line up properly. But there you go. Once it's done, it's just one basic solid piece. This is pretty keen because this is the way it works in real life, but it's also this model's downfall. So if you see here, you can kind of pull out this bogie. It's just held in there with a clip. You can't mess this part up. Don't worry. It only looks right if this little groove is slotted into the proper one, and then the next one goes either high or low. See, if I put it on the high one, it doesn't look right, and it won't operate properly either. So it's pretty easy to tell if it's not correct. So you make sure to just pop the Jacobs bogie into the correct slot here. Again, this is the wrong one, so you just move it up and then you pop it into the right one, as long as you have enough dexterity, which I seem to be missing right now. The problem with these cars is this sliding stair set, and basically it slides in and out so that it's always supposedly lined up properly with the Jacobs bogie. Otherwise, you'd have to put the stairs onto the bogie or something like that. So this, I think, is their deal, is they let the Jacobs bogie swing around and this thing will get pushed out of the way. I have some Lilliput cars with these, and frankly, they just never work well. They bind, they're inconsistent, and these are just an incredible pain. This consist can go around my track a bunch of times and it'll be fine. I mean, we're talking like an hour, it'll run fine. Then all of a sudden, one of the stairs will bind and I won't know why, and you'll fix it, which is actually not that easy while it's on track. Then you fix it and then it binds again, and then it binds up like 6-7 times in a row. I really don't know why, but it's really inconsistent. When it binds on track, this is what you get. You get this really wonky, out of place Jacobs bogie, and again, you're not sure which of these 2 stairs has bound, so yeah, it's a real pain. The locomotive that I'm going to use to build the S-Bahn train is this Marklin Taurus that they just came out with. It is 39829. It's not the universal model. It doesn't have 4 pantographs. It only has the 2. So it'll have the ascending tone start like all these do. Since this one's Marklin, it's only offered in MFX/DCC digital. If you want an analog or a DC ready one, they may make a Trix version that you can use for that. We'll just get this one out of the package here and we'll take a quick look at it. The body is made of zinc, seems like zinc die cast, so that's where it's going to get a lot of its weight from. As you can see, this is definitely a Coke Taurus, Coke everywhere. It's Coke red, a lot of the Coke symbols, everything Coke. Now, I don't really have to do a review of this model because I've already done one. It's effectively the same model as the Marklin Railjet that they just released. I can't tell that there are any differences for what it's worth, so I'm exactly sure that they're the same thing. And unfortunately, they have the same flaw that model does as well. This was supposed to be released in 2021, but it was delayed because of COVID. As soon as I saw it, of course, I got my order in immediately, and here's what it looks like in the catalog. This is a bit of a scratch my head model. I'm not quite sure what they were thinking here. If you read it, it is a fictional locomotive. It's a fantasy locomotive. But what's odd is below that it says that the locomotive looks as it did in 2020. So it's a little bit bizarre. The locomotive never looked like this and I've confirmed it, I've gone and looked for it, and this locomotive just doesn't exist. It's supposed to be a freight locomotive, and one of the reasons you can tell is it's because it's not a universal, so it could only work within Germany, sort of. So it's a freight locomotive, and they released 2 other boxcar sets at the same time if you want to get those. And I did purchase them, but if you want this, you better think about getting it because it's supposedly a one-time series. They haven't always followed that, but it's supposed to be, so if you like it, you better get it. It's a pretty detailed model. There's just nothing about it that, it's a Taurus, and they made sure that they painted it, they all coked it up as much as they possibly could. As Marklin, it doesn't have a driver in it. So certainly from my 3-foot rule, this is going to look great on my layout. The locomotive that's going to pull my German double-decker is this RailAd RA1005 Universal Siemens Taurus. Unlike the Marklin locomotive, this one actually existed, and it is part of the Slovenian railway fleet. That's where you see the SZ on it. It sounds more like a Vectron. It uses Vectron technology because it's the Universal 4 version. I'm not sure what's up with the company RailAd. They all seem to only make Tauruses, and they seem to mimic always real locomotives, but I don't know what's up with the company. I can't find out much. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen another locomotive other than a Taurus come from AdRail. But they are a manufacturer that specializes in making kind of these really limited one-off locomotives that depict advertising that was done on the Tauruses. They don't make any straight-up or plain locomotives. From what I've been able to find, it looks like RailAd actually is a real company that really wraps these Tauruses, and then they make models of the real locomotive that they wrapped. I think that's right. Other than what you're seeing here, I'm not entirely sure what the differences are. The Coca-Cola one doesn't have a top headlight, and I don't know if that's because it's a freight locomotive or what the standards differences in Europe are. So if you notice, the RailAd version is DC, and of course the Marklin one is Marklin Digital. So I'm going to be able to run these side by side, and I'm looking forward to that because that was the plan all along. I think that'll make for a really interesting contrast between the two. One of the things I noticed is that they're kind of sloppy about finishing the actual shell on this. You can see a lot of tooling marks that they didn't get out of there. I don't know. It just seems like they could have done a better job. This seems almost like it's made out of styrofoam if you were to look at it, just because of all this, the leftover markings on it. I think they could have gone over and smoothed and polished this one more time. If you want a super prototypical S-Bahn consist, then purchase one of these. It's a BR111 locomotive, which was one of the primary S-Bahn locomotives. This one actually has the same paint scheme that's on the car, so it looks even more authentic. And what's nice about these triple ones is there are a ton of them. You can pick them up. I think this is an old Marklin one from the 80s, and I just converted to digital. It runs really well, although I think it could use some more traction tires and probably a little bit more weight. As far as the other set, I'm going to go ahead and run, and I don't really have too many DR diesels or any kind of locomotives, but it looks like the Ludmilla here pulled just about everything. So I don't feel too bad about putting it on there. It's the diesel with the face only a mother could love, but it's kind of quirky and keen because of that. So the VR232 Ludmilla, it should be a good candidate to pull this if you're trying to make a real-life consist. All right, well, let me summarize this a little bit if you're planning on building one of these types of trains. From a prototypicality standpoint, you can get exceptionally close. Actually, if you have the 4-car set, I think it's dead on. If you have the 3-car set, the cab car isn't quite the right one, but it's really close. From a pricing standpoint, you just don't have any choice. You have to purchase the Marklin products at Marklin prices, and I think they're a little bit elevated for what they are, but that's all you've got to go with. From a rarity standpoint, well, it's just not going to be super rare because Marklin makes these carriages and they've been making them for a while. But if you want to include the locomotive, then I guess it'll be kind of rare, especially since the Marklin locomotive is a one-time run only locomotive. As far as variations and mixing it up, there aren't a whole lot of options because if you want this Coke train, you got to buy these Coke cars. So the only real opportunity you have to mix it up is in the Locomotive. And so that does give you some options anyhow. That's not so bad. If you want to create the bi-level Coca-Cola train, then, it's actually a lot of these are going to be somewhat similar. From a prototypicality standpoint, you can get pretty much dead-on accurate, especially if you use a DR or DB locomotive. You can get a pretty much exact train. At least right now, the cost is going to be about the same as it is for Marklin. You can purchase a cheaper locomotive because you don't have to use the one I used, but the issue is the Rivarossi cars. That's because they only manufacture the Rivarossi cars, maybe for 1 or 2 years, so you're going to have to go out and find them either used or new old stock. They do show up on eBay once in a while and on places like Ricardo, but it's getting more difficult as we go on. As far as the variations, you're pretty much in the same boat as you are with the other one. You have to get these cars, and the real way to change it up is via the Locomotive. What's nice is I think the double-deckers went a little bit farther in terms of their reach, and also you can use East German locomotives if you want. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Build a Train Workshop. As I put these together, I think, what kinds of things would I be interested in? And that's, for what it's worth, what I'm going to help you be interested in. I know a lot of people, particularly in the United States, but probably other people in other countries, like to run specific time periods, specific railroads, and that's great. But if you're wondering what else is out there, I hope that this series will give you some of that information. One of the things I love about this hobby is how, just like with real trains, HO gauge and all these other gauges are standard. So if you ever choose to, you can explore trains from all over the world and all periods that trains have been made. And that's part of what makes this hobby really wonderful for me anyhow. Like usual, I'm going to give you a running session. A few weeks later, I'll post the running session only so people can enjoy that as well. I'm going to mix up this running session a little bit. I'm going to run it with the locomotives I showed you here, but I'm also going to run these consists with, the more prototypical locomotives so you can see what that looks like. For a running buddy, I'm going to have a DB consist of, they're also double-deckers, and I'm pretty sure they were XDR double-deckers, and I'm going to use a DB BR210 to pull them, a turbine diesel combination locomotive, so I hope you enjoy that. As always, I really appreciate you watching. I really do. I love reading your comments. Let me know about these consists. Let me know if any changes you might make or anything you might do to them to make them better. Thanks tons for your viewership, and like usual, happy model railroading, and hey, I'll catch you next time.